Hi folks, I'm Matt. Welcome to my Expanded Universe, a show where I go through the entire EU in chronological order as best I know how. Now you might be wondering, why am I still in these beautiful, beautiful bathrobe here, with my hair slicked back, my gold chain Ewok? It's because we're talking about the Lando Calrissian Trilogy, and we're into Book 2 by L. Neil Smith called The Flamewind of Oseon. Now in this book, Lando is invited to a sabacc tournament in Oseon, where of course he's winning, but when he is wrongfully accused of a crime he didn't commit, he is forced to help them find the Flamewind. Does this sound kind of familiar from the first book, where he's put in a situation and now he has to help? Yeah, same thing here. Now in this book, there is also the villain from the very first novel who's back here again. He's been tracking down Lando, and he wants to, have his revenge. And Lando's luck, of course, in this book, which started off big, it takes place right after the first book. He's going to blow all his riches and spoils of war and be poor again, have to come up with a new plan to get rich. I love Lando. One thing I didn't mention in the first video about his the first novel was that Lando's character is, he always comes up on top, but the thing is about Lando is it's through somewhat of his wit and somewhat by happenstance, by luck. And I like that. I like that better than he's the smartest, strongest, can do anything. No, he doesn't even pilot his own ship. He didn't like piloting his own ship. He's a terrible pilot. So he has a lot of fallacies in that, and Lando just seems very relatable in a way. Just that guy that's always lucky and always ends up on top. That's Lando, and I like that. I like how L. Neil Smith wrote the character. Speaking of Lando, he is a very underused character in the Expanded Universe. We don't get to see him that much at all. He is maybe in a few other books. He doesn't have any of his own adventures. He shares adventures with the other three, Han, Luke, and Leia, but he doesn't really have his own books like he does this. At least Leia and Han and even Luke had their own novel. Sure, Lando got this trilogy way back in the day, but it seems like he just wasn't used that much. He got a few comic books, but I was very disappointed that this was the only way we could see about Lando, and these were great stories. Now, one thing that this book gets right is the game of sabacc. L. Neil Smith basically defines sabacc in this game. All the time they're playing sabacc. And sabacc is kind of like space poker, and it's actually really fun, and he explains how it goes. And so sometimes you're reading about Lando's hand and how sometimes it changes at the last minute, sometimes for bad, sometimes for good, and of course Lando always comes out on top. But it's very cool to read about sabacc, and sabacc gets played a whole lot in the novels. In fact, I don't know which novel it is, and maybe one of you readers who've read it recently can tell me. But in one of the novels, he is surrounded by bad guys. I mean, he is in a bad situation. How does he get out of it? Who knows? But the next chapter, it starts off with him yelling sabacc, because he convinced them all to play sabacc. He went from they want to kill him to let's all play cards. That's the kind of character I'm talking about. That's the kind of Lando I love to see. And when you're reading these books, you're going to want to play sabacc. It is really, really enticing, the description of this card game. In fact, after reading these books, I actually came up with my own deck of sabacc cards. Now, there is a video. It's an old video I made years ago, and I'm sure some of you have already seen it. A lot of you probably have, where I talk about how to play sabacc. And I did it from using the rules from the book and the rules from the West End games. Now, there are several different rules. I hear the rules have been rewritten since then, or I guess better explained. So it may not be, verbatim my review, because it was a long time ago. But I would play sabacc with my friends or by myself, because I just loved how it was portrayed in the Lando book. So I took these cards from Crisis on Cloud City, the West End Games guide, and I cut them out and I laminated them, and so I have a complete deck here. I have a die that's right here. Yeah, this is from an old Star Wars game. I can't remember which one because I don't have the game anymore, but one of the die ends is a lightsaber, and so every time we say it's someone's turn, they roll the die. Now, the randomizer, your cards will be discarded and you'll pick 3 new or 4 new cards, however many cards you have, if the lightsaber pops up. But there's a 1 in 6 chance. So it's not going to happen all the time, but it will eventually happen. So I think that's a nice way to build your own. If you want to just get a 6-sided die and say, okay, the number 1 is when everything gets randomized, and then play and print out your own sabacc cards, it's actually a pretty fun game. And I'm really happy that I made it, but it was because of the Lando Calrissian trilogy is how that sabacc got made. And I play with myself all the time, dealing out 4 different sets of cards and trying to get everyone to get that 21, or to get the Idiot's Array, which is really nice, which is the 0, the 2, and the 1. Therefore saying you have 21. There's so many good things to talk about with L. Neil Smith's novels of Lando Calrissian that I'm going to save the rest of that for book 3 next time.